welcome back to the Eyes of Sci-Tech. We're finally back with episode 4 of our educational series.
Just a small refresher, we are 12-year-old innovators who are working on sharing their knowledge with you guys.
It's Kavya here.
And my name is Jaspreet.
Two Sci-Tech students who are overly passionate about the new projects and methods we learn each day and open to sharing the knowledge with you guys.
So let's get straight to it. Today's video is quite fascinating because we are going to be looking at a topic that helps transportation, which is part of transportation, which is flight. Now, looking into this, we will go deeper into the forces of flight, which we will be looking towards weight, drag, thrust, and lift. Going deeper into that, we will be focusing on the parts of a plane, which the main focuses are 3 of them: rudder, ailerons, and elevator.
There are 4 main forces when talking about flight. These forces are thrust, drag, weight, and lift. Let's start off by talking about lift. Lift is a basic force which is needed to make anything fly. Hot air balloons, helicopters, planes, even balloons that you sometimes accidentally let go of. When the wings of the airplane are tipped up, this movement creates change in air pressure. The air underneath the wings is going slower than the air going above. Air pressure makes objects fly. Without it, nothing can fly because the change in pressure is needed to get lift. When an airplane is flying, the air moving over the wings creates lifts. Next, we have drag. Drag is one of the 4 forces of flight which makes the airplane go backwards. It slows down the plane during flight. The less drag, the faster the speed. Since drag pushes the plane backwards, and to get a plane moving the way you want it to, most of the time you have to move forwards, you need the drag to be lower so that you can move forward faster. Drag varies on the shape of the aircraft. It is also known to resistance of movement of objects through fluids. Following, we have thrust. Thrust is the force that helps move planes forward. Thrust is the opposite of drag. All the forces are opposing to each other. So while thrust helps the plane move forward, drag helps the plane move backward. There needs to be more drag than thrust for the plane to move backwards, and there needs to be more thrust than drag to help the plane move forward. Finally, we have weight. Weight is the opposite of lift. All the forces are opposing to each other as stated before, and when they are in different forms of flight, their reactions change. The force of weight pulls the plane down because the weight pushes the plane, and because of gravity, the plane has to go down. For a plane to fly, the weight needs to be less than the lift, and for the plane to go down, the weight needs to be more than the lift. Weight is created by passengers, luggage, cargo, as well as the crewmates and the ship and the plane captains. Weight pushes down in a vertical motion inside the airplane during flight. In this unit of flight, there are not only 4 forces, there are also different movable parts and components on the plane, as well as the vertical stabilizer and the horizontal stabilizer. Since what's the point of forces if there's nothing for them to react upon? When it comes to talking about the movable parts on the plane, they move a little differently compared to the 4 forces of flight. While the 4 forces of flight were moving up, down, forward, and backward, the movable parts on the plane move in the horizontal stabilizer and the vertical stabilizer. On the plane, there is both of these. The horizontal stabilizer is sideways, hence the word horizontal, and the vertical stabilizer is straight, hence vertical. You can think of it as a plus sign in the middle of the plane. The 3 main parts of an airplane, which are the elevator, aileron, and rudder, move from them. A key tip to remember is that whichever stabilizer the part is located on, it moves in the opposite one. Now Jaspreet will be talking about the parts of the plane and going into more detail about.
There are 3 main focuses on looking at the parts of a plane, which I already talked about, which is ailerons, elevators, and rudders. Looking into that, have you ever asked yourself, on an airplane, what makes it turn or roll to the side, or what part of that plane makes it do that? Well, looking at that, it's the ailerons. So what are the ailerons technically? Ailerons are that helps us roll to the left or roll to the right. Now, an example would it be is they're hinged to the either side of the bottom. So let me give you an example. Now, this ailerons, they help the pilot from the main axis of the plane turn or roll to the either direction. So an example would be, for example, this is the nose. This is the nose, this is the rudder, and this is the axis. So this and this would be the axis, and it helps us roll that way or helps us roll this way. Looking at that, now I had said that it hinged to the bottom right or left because it's on either side. And looking at that, for example, this is the plane. This is the nose, this is the rudder, and these are the wings, either side, airfoils. And looking at that, this section could be the aileron section, and this from the bottom is the hinge section. But like I said, this is not where the ailerons flip, because looking at this, the ailerons don't move around left to right. They move up and down. For example, in this section, it would be moving up and down on either side. Now, to make the airplane move left or right, for example, if we were to move left, the right one would go up, the left one would go bottom, would move to the bottom, and it would move to the left, or either direction. If it would move to the right, this one would be down and this one would be up, and it would move to the right. Looking at that, it has many different molecules that travel through that aerofoil. Now, aerofoil is that particular airfoil, like this part of the airplane. So looking at that, the left one, when it would move to the, for example, if you were to move to the left, if you were to move to the right, sorry, the top part of that would be bent up, right? So it would be like this, and it would have a higher molecules traveling through the bottom since it's bent up and it has a higher distance to travel. And the bottom one, it's smooth, it's straight. So it would have the molecule O travel through the top, and the bottom would have X. Now, since this one is bent down, the right side of the wing, the aerofoil or the airfoil is bent, or the aileron is bent down, it would be like this, for example, and you would have the wing like this. For example, if you would put it like this. Okay, now since this is bent down, the top of this would have a bend, right? So instead of having, like for the left one, it had a bend at the bottom, this time it has a bend at the top. So that means it would have a higher molecules traveling through the top, or faster molecules traveling to the top, but a lower pressure. Because it is bent at the bottom, like it's bending to the bottom, which means it has a higher distance to travel, which means it would be the X molecule traveling through the bottom. And through the bottom, it would be traveling through the top, and through the bottom, it would be traveling as O, because it has a shorter distance and it can go in a straight line, and it doesn't have to go through a bend or an arc. Looking at that, that would be an O, since it has a lower distance, lower speed, which means it doesn't have to travel fast, and it has a higher pressure to travel in. Now, looking at this, okay, so the main reason the ailerons are able to roll left or right is because of which way they face, up or down. Now, like I said before, if you were to move left, the only way to move or roll to the left would be having the left aileron or the aerofoil to move down and the right one to move up. So that pressure that goes between it moves it to the left. And same thing, if it were to go to the right, it would have the left aileron up and the right one down, and the pressure going through this, which will make it go to the right. Next are the elevators. And elevators play a very big role in making a plane pitch up or down. But the thing is, whenever you're trying to make an elevator, so what is an elevator specifically, and where does it belong? So an elevator, for example, I will give you another example. So an elevator, it would be, for example, this is the nose. This is the nose, this is the rudder. Now the rudder, I will explain what it is technically later, but beside the elevator, there are two wings. Now looking at these wings, like there are two little airfoils at the bottom, which go up and down and up and down. And those two are what make us pitch up or stall down. Now looking at that, these elevators, where you might have seen them in example, they do not pitch left to right or move left to right, because they move up and down, which makes the air pressure from the bottom be, for example, if we were to pitch up, it would be met like this, which means that there would be a higher molecule, faster molecule with low pressure molecule at the bottom, which makes it the molecule X. But since this one is plain and it could go straight like that, up, that would have lower speed, higher pressure, but lower distance, which means that it would be O that would be traveling through the top. But if you wanted the plane to stall down, it would go like this, which means, it would go like this, which means this would have to go through an arc and this one would strictly just go through straight, which means it would be O at the bottom and X through the top. This is what you do technically is about an elevator. An elevator is simply what makes a plane simply go up or down. Lastly comes the rudder. Now looking into the rudder is, for example, let me give you an example. So this is the nose of the plane, and this is the rudder. Now let's zoom into that, and this at the back of an airplane, there's always a tip that goes left or right, which helps us go to the left or right, not roll, but yaw to the left or right. It's on the vertical axis, which means it's not on the horizontal one, not the elevator one. It's on the vertical axis. So looking into that, whenever the rudder, is moving, for example, is yawing to the left, for example, it would be like this, and the top surface, for example, it would be like this. So the top surface, it would have a bend. Now looking at the bend, it has a higher distance to travel. Now that would be X, which means it has a higher distance, a higher speed, because it has to get at the same time at the end of the bottom one. And the X has a lower pressure, but now looking at the bottom one, it has a lower speed, lower distance, but higher pressure to travel in, which makes it the O molecule. Now if it were to be the opposite, like this, okay? So it would be like this on a plane, and it would make us help move right. So looking at this, there would be a higher molecule on this one and lower on the same one. Same thing, but it would be the opposite side, like this. So if we were to travel to the left, it would be that way, and if it would be traveling to the right, it would be this way. So that is what a rudder. It helps us yaw to the left or right, and it is on the vertical axis.
Next, we have yaw, pitch, and roll. These three movements take place around the vertical stabilizer and the horizontal stabilizer. Whenever any of these movements is happening, the nose goes in one direction and the tail always goes in the opposite direction. For example, if the plane is yawing around the central pivot point, or you could think of it as a vertical stabilizer, the nose might go left, so a tail would push right, and they always go in opposites when moving like that. If the nose is left, the tail is right. This is for the movement of yaw. Yaw is when the plane rotates around the central pivot point, as shown in the previous example. It's like the center of the plane, otherwise known as the vertical axis, because when you look at the X, the vertical axis is through the top. When the rudder moves left to right, the nose moves side to side. Yaw, roll, and pitch is always talking about and related to the movement of the plane nose. The yaw movement happens around the vertical axis of the plane, as explained before. The roll movement happens around the vertical axis towards the front of the plane near the nose area. The pitch movement happens around the axis at the bottom of the left wing.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the eyes of Sci-Tech for more experiences.